I ended up getting that one. I had to wade a river and the whole thing, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, come on. There was deep snow the last day. Headed home after that hunt.
In Vermont.
No, this is in Maine.
Oh, in Maine.
Northern Maine. And the grader had plowed out to a spot there and got out beyond that. And I found where some bucks had a fight in the road there, had a doe with them. Had a fight in the road and went down with this bank. So I went back to park and was going to track them. And these Vermonters came by and said, that's our deer. And I'm like, no, I found it first. And it was a father and son deal. So I offered to arm wrestle the guy on the hood of the truck for it. and like...
Welcome back to another episode of Northwoods Whitetails Podcast. I'm sitting here in Vermont with Joey Davis and Dave Coker. Thanks for having us.
All right, thanks for coming by.
Yeah, we've been talking deer hunting for probably almost an hour already. Seems like it's always that way.
Sure is.
Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? And
I'm just an old buck hunter. I've been obsessed with whitetail hunting since I was 8 years old, my first season. And I always bow hunted and rifle hunted. And I started hunting Maine and tracking in the early 80s. And I hunt now some in Canada and New York, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Still my passion, still my obsession. And we're retired now, so I got full-time hunting and fishing privileges. So
nice. What did you do for work?
I worked in a grocery business all my life. My grandparents had a store, and I worked in high school. And I was a meat cutter for many years, and worked for a wholesaler for 26 years, and just ran supermarkets and small stores, and yeah.
Nice.
That helps with cutting deer up, I bet.
Oh yeah.
I had to learn
a science.
I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad never cut deer up much. My neighbor always did it for us.
Really?
So when I moved out of my parents' house, I was like, well, I should probably try to learn. The first few deer were pretty messy.
We used to do it as a family. We'd bring in a piece of plywood, set it on the kitchen table at my grandfather's house, and everybody would just chip in.
Yep. It's the best way to
Start
do it.
cutting it up. Yep. Good times. So how'd you get into tracking bucks?
I got friendly with Lane Benoit. And I guess probably you don't get any luckier than that. If you like deer hunting, we became friends and started bird hunting together and hanging around with hot rods and chasing around being young men, and eventually started deer hunting with him.
Yeah.
And pretty much everything I learned was from him and from listening to everybody else. I mean, it's no different than when you play a sport and you're sitting on the bench. You learn a lot just by listening from people and pick it up, and I still do. I mean, I'm still learning deer hunting as I go, and you listen to what people say and what experiences they had and what worked or didn't work particularly, and it's always a learning experience.
That's cool. I can only imagine what those camps were like in the 80s or 70s and 80s in Maine with the Benoits. It must have been
Yeah, it was a good time.
awesome stuff.
In the day there was enough deer you could ride around and find deer tracks from your truck and park and track them off in. And if you had snow the next day, you could do it again. And had some phenomenal seasons up there with snow and whitetails. And kind of it's gone the other way a bit now, but harder to find a track than it used to be.
Right. I hear it's coming back a little bit, but we'll see. The winters haven't been as bad as they were, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what do you think the decline of Maine was from?
Just bad winters and lack of good deer yards.
Yep.
A lot of coyotes up there. I guess there always was, but the lack of real good wintering yards seemed to be the number one thing. It seemed they used to leave a lot more of a buffer near the water zones, it seemed. And
right.
Those big cedar swamps, they wanted to go down and chip those trees now. And that seems to be that in the weather. I mean, that's certainly wasn't from people going up there shooting the deer. So.
Right.
Yeah, it takes a long time. They say it
takes
to
come back.
Yeah, they say it takes an average of 75 years to grow a deer yard to where it can sustain deer throughout the winter.
It needs that old growth canopy.
Yep. So they snip that off.
Because they need the thermal cover.
Yep, but they need the browse.
The browse too, yeah.
Yep. So.
Huh.
Yep.
And you guys ended up hunting Ontario.
Yeah, we went to Ontario during the heyday of it. Got to see it at its height, its peak, and it's ridiculously fun with the amount of deer were out there. And And the same thing, they've taken it hard. They've had some bad winters. Last winter was terrible for them. I understand they were feeding deer with helicopters and snowmobiles in some areas.
That's interesting. I've never heard that. Helicopters.
That's crazy.
That's pretty
That's
crazy.
That's too bad.
Of course, they have quite a wolf population there. It's really, really done well. When there was a lot of deer, there was a lot of wolves, like everything in nature. And when you get deep snow and wolves, it just doesn't mix with whitetails. Out there, really not so much for deer yards because they don't usually get that kind of snow.
Did you ever see a wolf?
Oh, yeah, I've seen plenty of them out there.
Really? In the
yeah,
woods?
Yeah. We filmed them and had them howling while we're cutting up a deer back in there. And,
Holy crap.
Oh, yeah. Had them on the way to drag a deer out, run into them. But they're pretty skittish humans. And
They are. They're smart, I've heard. They're hard to kill if you try to. Like, they're wicked smart.
That howl is, it's hair raising.
Yeah. The first few times you hear it in the middle of the day, I'm like, what is going on? But
Yeah.
I left one night overnight at a beaver pond there because it was too far to drag out and came back the next day to cut it up. And they were yipping, yapping just across the pond from me. But I was kind of talking out loud, making plenty of noise. And they don't bother you, I don't think.
Yeah.
You don't hear of a lot of guys getting attacked by wolves.
No.
I haven't anyways.
No, I think they're more afraid of you just as much as you're afraid of them.
Typically where you'll see them is you're driving down the road. You look over and there's a wolf trotting right alongside you on the road or down the railroad tracks. I see a big black one. The last time we were out there just trotting along first thing in the morning. And it's not usually when you have a gun in your hand and a tag.
Yeah.
We first went there, a small game tag. You could shoot partridges and wolves. So after you shot your deer, you'd pretend you're a wolf hunter at least. But now it's $300 plus for a wolf tag.
Wow.
So most people aren't buying the wolf tags.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that would make a cool mount, though. A wolf.
Black wolf.
A big black wolf. Now, since you've seen wolves, when you come back to the Northeast, is it like no question when you see a coyote? You know, like people around here, they're like, oh, I saw a wolf.
Yeah.
Is it like that big of a difference?
It is just a different looking animal, even size-wise. A 60-pound wolf doesn't look like a 60-pound coyote.
Really?
I mean, they're just a different
species.
different animal. Yeah.
Okay.
The track on a mature wolf is pretty impressive.
I've heard
too.
it looks like a bear track almost. Like the
It's
same.
pretty good size. Yep.
I can't imagine.
It's bigger than a German Shepherd, full-size German Shepherd.
I've seen some pictures of guys holding them, like standing up with them, and they're like as big as a guy almost.
I was talking with a guy, Jared from Onyx last night, and he was talking about northern Minnesota, and he was saying that the wolf population out there right now is out of control. He says there's more wolves in Minnesota than there is in all of Idaho and Montana combined.
Wow. Can you shoot them in Minnesota?
I don't know if you can or not, but he said that the guys up there that have deer camps aren't seeing anything for deer anymore.
Oof.
Last time I was in Ontario, there's a lot of Minnesota, Wisconsin guys up in there, and they've lost a lot of their hunting habitat due to the wolves.
Yeah.
But it's no better where they are in Canada, just as wolves in deep snow.
Yeah.
That's the combination that'll get you. Because the deer seemed to survive well when we first out there. It was overrun with whitetails, and there was wolf tracks everywhere. But there wasn't a bad winter. You know?
They can coexist. They can't do the winters. Yeah. So I want to change gears here a little bit. You got a giant Ontario buck here on the wall that caught my eye when we walked in. Do you want to tell the story of how you killed that deer?
Yeah, that buck I actually was almost a spot and stalk. I was looking across a bunch of ledges, and I saw two bucks come out way out on the ledge. Looked with binoculars, and the second one had a real sloping back and real darker color, like a real good buck. So I just cut cross lots on him. It was probably a quarter mile, and got up onto that ledge and started working down that ledge, and they come up over the top. The small one, then finally the big one came and ran dead away from me down across the rocks, and got a few shots in and got him. Pretty thrilled with it.
It's a good buck. What did he weigh?
235.
235. Is that your heaviest buck?
I got a 244, and I got 3 or 4 more than the 230s. That area produces pretty heavy deer.
Wow, 244.
Well, some of them are on, not so great scales either up there.
Right, so it could have been even more.
Yeah, or less. Yeah. Never know.
Hey, they weigh what they weigh now. No kidding. That's awesome.
So you shot one on video. Was that the big one on video?
I got a couple on video there. That is not one. I just got an interview in that one. I shot one of the big 8s on video.
I remember it was like kind of...
Yeah, laying right in the bed right there. And I shot, and it flopped over luckily.
Okay. Was that fun? Was it fun having a guy film you?
Yeah, it was different. It was like a lot of things, learning experience. Everybody is like America's Home Video meets deer hunting. You know, it was those guys' first time doing it sometimes, and we had some just adventures with them. I mean, hunting's all about adventures. So, and the rule you learn right off: anything goes wrong, blame it on the camera.
Didn't get the buck. Camera guy's fault. Yeah.
Oh gosh, we got up there one year, and the kid was his first day with his camera. Literally, they sent him with me, and I jumped these bucks up in this area, and I saw they were small racked eight pointer looking, and a couple other deer, and they ran out, and I called, and they stopped. And I turned to the camera. I said, wait, I'm going to call him right back. The wind was blowing to my right to this big rock. I said, I'll call him right to that rock. So I waited a while, and I could see the buck. Finally, his tail flicked, and he turned his head like he was going to go, and I gave one more like a fawn bleat. And he turned, and he came back downwind, sniffing. And behind him was another 8-pointer. Behind him was a 4-pointer. All 3 bucks came back within like bow range, right there where they could smell us. They ran off, and I turned to the camera, real casual. I'm like, that's how you stop them. That's how you call them in. No need to shoot those deer. There was a lot of deer there. We could come back to that spot next year and shoot a good one. And I said, let me see the video. And I look at the look on the guy's face, and he's just freaking out. He was on standby.
Oh, no.
He didn't.
He got none of it,
Yeah.
That's how you learn. That's
Yep.
Yeah.
No kidding. Yeah, it must have been awesome.
Huh.
With those guys. And I haven't seen the newer Benoit videos.
The new ones?
The one, or the newer ones, the ones from Ontario. I had seen, my dad had some of the old ones when they were in Maine. And those were cool videos.
I remember Dave shooting that buck. It was like behind a evergreen tree or something of some kind, and you see the buck tip right over, right, like put his head down right there, or something. He was in his bed. I remember that. I was like, whoa.
You said you used one of the tips. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Loading a buck.
Loading
a buck. There's nobody else, I don't think, that I've ever seen anywhere in another video or YouTube thing or anything explain to someone how to load a 200-pound buck into the back of the truck, right?
That's important information.
After seeing him do it, it was like, okay, yeah, I can give it a go.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that was all pretty funny. It's like they film, and you guys know because you do it, and then you go back and you piece here and there, and I never knew what was going to make it in, but he wanted a video on dragging out big bucks. We always got questions, how do you get the big bucks? So I had a big 230-pounder down, and what was that down non-typical? And I said, well, I'll go in and show dragging it out. I spent the whole day setting up a camera, going back and dragging and going test and looking at it, and I'd have it wrong and hard to do with one person, ridiculous. But I spent this whole thing dragging the deer out, and I finally, the time I was coming to load it, I was kind of getting tired and getting kind of a foul mood, so I was a little bit aggressive with loading the buck and making it, and it was always Lane's favorite part.
Yeah.
And once in a while, I'll get somebody who'll comment on it.
Yeah. No, it was perfect the way that you described it, you know?
Well, one of those 8-pointers I shot across a lake, and these guys gave me a boat ride back to a boat launch with it, and they gave me a ride around, got my truck, and I came back to the boat launch, and there's like 6 or 8 guys standing around the deer. Okay, we want to see you load it in the truck. I said, all you guys are not even going to help me. Like, no, and they made me load it in front of them. So it was comical. That's the fun part of it.
Yeah. No, that it is.
Now, did you get to do a lot of tracking in Ontario, or did you not get the snow?
Not so much. No, you don't really got much track of snow up there. When you did, your tag didn't last long usually because it was ridiculously good tracking in the day. Now it's it's tough up there now, but
not hard to find a big track.
No, up there was more without the snow, just following deer trails and deer sign, looking at antler rubs. And if you grew up hunting in Vermont and went and saw that, it was I saw more antler rubs the first day than I saw my whole life. I'm like, I just couldn't believe it. And you come back to a spot the next morning, there'd be fresh rubs there. I'm like, wow, there's deer here,
Yeah.
And it was crazy. But it was fun to be able to see that, at least that excess. And, it diminishes the value of the trophy a bit, as we were talking before, that one of my main bucks that I tracked hunted for 2 weeks or something was a lot more of a trophy to me than anything I shot in Ontario. But it's still fun. It's all deer hunting's fun, so.
And you picked up a lot of sheds, probably.
Yeah, in the day we were picking up 5 or 6 to a dozen sheds every year. Walking around out there, and I always lug them back. And now it's pretty rare to find a shed out there.
No kidding.
So now that you're not hunting out there so much, you're spending more time back east?
Yeah, I'm trying to learn some more of New York hunting. I shot a buck out there last year. I'm trying to learn New York some more. I hunt Maine pretty regularly. And of course, I bow hunt Vermont. I like to hunt right from my house here, just for small deer. But
Yeah.
the deer I've shot from my house are some of my favorite ones. And
Yep.
Yep.
It's funny. It's always about the hunt.
Sure
Yeah,
is.
It is.
well, the older you get, the more you realize that. Larry used to say to me, I don't care if I never shoot another deer, as long as I get to go. And
Right.
I'm at that point now. I'll pass them up till it's getting to be the last day, then shoot something legal. I really don't care if it's a monster or not. But it's all where you are, what time of the season is, how much time you got left. I mean, it all comes into play with me when I pull the trigger. So
How
Right.
empty the freezer is.
yeah, but as long as I get to go, it's like fishing. Now I get to fish a lot being retired. Now I really don't care if I catch much fish or not, as long as I get to go and get that opportunity. And
Be out there and.
oh, amen.
Yep. Now, did you do some filming for the Benoits as well?
A little bit of just my own stuff. I did some interviews and
Okay.
like the thing of the loading the deer. I filmed it and helped them a little bit. But yeah, I was just glad to help them with any little we could. I mean, the work they put into that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Especially Shane. I know he just hours and hours and hours of doing that. I don't think the technology was quite as available as it is now. So it's very difficult. They put a ton of effort into that.
No kidding. Yeah. I didn't know if you had filmed like behind the camera at all for him or not.
Just a little bit.
Just a
nothing-
little bit,
yeah,
nothing crazy.
Yeah, not some interviews and
Yep.
clips here and there.
So, hunting with those guys over the years, what are some of the more fond memories that you have with those guys in Maine, tracking bucks? I mean, there must have been some good stories, getting stuck with vehicles or close calls at night, or anybody ever spend the night in the woods or any of that?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, going back to the early days, it's like going up there and buying the same pair of boots that they wore and just hanging out with them, being at the school bus or back at camp at night. I guess the big thing when everybody got back at night, wanted to hear what the adventures were. And you wanted to have a story of your own to tell, hopefully. Something good to happen to you. And so we always said, well, what adventures you have today? And get some coffee going and listen to the stories of what they did and what you saw, and then sharing your story. And there again, like I said, everything's a learning experience. You can pick up a lot from that.
Yeah.
But I was always big on wanting an adventure and the camaraderie of it. And the big thing up there, if you had a month to hunt, especially if you had snow, you had to do was just not shoot a small buck, and you could get yourself a good buck. So it wasn't a miraculous thing, but most people wouldn't wait, or they don't have that kind of time. If you only have a weekend to hunt, you're going to shoot what you can shoot.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Now, you said earlier that everybody's kind of got their own style of tracking or hunting. What would you say your style is?
My style's adapting because of my age and, getting to be looking ahead to years of not just running a deer down like a dog. Like I used to when I was young. I just sort of track them until they gave up. It seemed like being a little more strategical about it, but still trying to learn what's a deer doing, where is he going, why is he going there, where they're going to show up, pacing yourself, saving your legs. You get all burnt out climbing those mountains. It's hard to recover mid-season. I mean, I learned that early on. It's like overtraining for a sport, so sometimes you need to get in that deep snow. You might want to save your legs so you get a real good track. But remembering spots to find tracks, I guess, is one of the big things now. You can't just ride the roads and find them from your truck necessarily in the North Country. Old, signpost rubs or crossings or sags up in those mountains where you've tracked bucks through a number of times, you always put that in your memory book that, geez, there's a place I can go up and pick up a track, at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever focus much around clear cuts at all?
Yeah, typically, if I just go to Maine now and just pick a spot up in there, I'm looking for a 2 or 3 year old clear cut, hopefully got some growth around the edges. I'm looking for some softwoods up high above it, hopefully. Some, water down low there, and there's always some doe activity there, and when there's does, there'll be buck coming around. You just don't want to waste your whole day going zigzagging back and forth across that clear cut trying to sort those tracks out. They come out at night, run back and forth around there, and just save a lot of time. Just go to the top of it and get in the woods and make a half circle and pick up a track above it.
Usually they're there somewhere.
Yeah, that's one thing I learned from just doing it too many times, is trying to sort something out where they've been chasing all night. Just cut off and pick it up somewhere else. And there's a lot of basics to tracking. It's like any sport, fundamentals. But outside of that, you got to use your judgment and your guessing. I mean, sometimes you start out on one track, it might be 2 or 3 bucks, different bucks for the days out that you're on, because you gave up this one for one reason or another. This one was fresher, this one's bigger, this one's going my direction. So you get some of that.
A lot of decisions to be made.
Yeah, and there's a lot of times I'm guessing when I'm tracking, when I get into a whole bunch of deer in a swamp and I know what direction my buck's headed, there's some guessing involved in it, going ahead. Sometimes you find them, sometimes you got to go back, but that there's not really written about or talked about. People think you're following just one buck track through the woods, but you're not. You get into where they jump a bunch of does out, another buck in there, and they get running back and forth. You can spend a lot of time wandering around, not find them. So there's some guesswork involved in it. But there again, experience comes, and if you hunt the same area, it helps you a lot because you know where the deer have been before. You'll come through some spots in northern New Hampshire where I bet 10 different times I've tracked a buck. He's gone through this one spot. I'm like, gosh, if someday I'll just come and sit in this spot. Of course, I never do because I wonder what's over the next knoll. And
you're looking for the adventure,
and there's nobody there chasing a deer around to put it to me too. Either.
Right? Do you ever think? I always have this thought, like when I get to the age where I can't go as much, I'm going to be a real good sitter because I'm going to know all those spots. Do you ever think that way? Like eventually when you
yeah, and you're still working on it all the time. Of course, you're all are bow hunters too, so you get plenty of practice setting already. So you know that's not a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like if you're a tracker, you're going to end up with a lot of good spots to sit just because you get to see where they go through all the time, you know?
We see it every year, right?
Yeah.
Places that if you were a stand hunter, you'd
just smoke them, yeah.
You'd sit there a couple days, you probably would shoot one.
Yeah.
You just got to bring yourself to sitting there a couple days.
Now, you also did a lot of scoring.
Yeah,
right?
I measured for quite a while. Really enjoyed that, and got so it took up all my time and energy. So eventually, I'm retired from that now, but really enjoyed that. And encourage any young people out there that are interested in to look up your local club and help support the sport that you love.
Right. Did you just score for Vermont, or did you score for?
No, I started with Northeast Big Buck Club actually before the Vermont Club was founded.
Oh.
I did Northeast Big Buck Club and New Hampshire Club and so forth, and then Vermont Club, and then I got a chance to become a Boone and Crockett measurer. So I did the Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young and so forth, and that was excellent. A lot of fun. Get to talk deer hunt with everybody and
see some big heads.
See some tremendous animals.
Yeah, I bet you did. Yep. Yeah, I see you got some really cool heads here that you've collected over the years. We went through them and talked about them when we got here. Some real interesting looking bucks, that's for sure. You know, that one from Texas is crazy. Can't imagine seeing that thing coming through the woods. It's got to be, 24, 25 inches wide, probably, something like that.
Yeah. Well, it was a legit 6x6, so it was just an example of a 6x6 that I had.
Yep. That's a cool buck. Yeah.
What was this closest one to us here?
That was Ontario buck, like 238 pounder. And that one, guys in a boat saw it, and the guy in the boat running the boat wouldn't let him shoot it rightfully. And two Vermonters tracked it for a while and lost it. This third Vermonter found the track and sorted it out, tracked it up through right to me just as I shot it.
No kidding.
I literally shot it out from underneath him. I felt terrible. I mean, I've had it done to me before, but this guy really deserved that deer. I was terrible. And you can party hunt out there, you know, and I'm like, gosh, I don't know if this should be his deer, but I had just put my tag on it.
No kidding.
I saw the track, I go, wow, that's a big buck. And I hadn't even got over to the track, and I heard it blow and go. And I shot it, and then his orange hat showed up. He was right there, just about to have the same shot at it I had. I feel terrible about to this day.
No kidding. Huh. Funny how that works out.
Sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug.
Yep.
Well, that's the one they gave me the boat ride with.
Oh, no kidding.
I sent this kid back down my back track to a swamp I'd been by and told him this one spot, if you saw where I kneeled in the snow, you could look and see some deer bedded in the swamp. And I figured there'd be bucks here. And he went back there and shot a little 8-pointer right in that spot. Oh, shit. And we took both deer out on the boat ride back to the boat launch. Where they made me load my buck by myself.
Is that next one over Ontario too? That 8-pointer?
That one was, all three of those are.
Yeah. Wow. That's a nice 10-pointer right there.
Yeah, that's a 150-inch. That was a year I was decided to hold out for a 150-inch deer. And I last day 150 and an eighth, just coincidentally.
Wow.
Yeah, it was one of them weird ones.
Yeah, he's got pretty rack.
I busted up ears. He was fighting with another buck. He was all full of tine holes.
No kidding.
I saw him. I thought I was shooting at him. He reared up on his hind feet once, and I thought it must have been me. and I was fighting with the other deer, and I never saw the other deer. I guess it was out across a place, and I had to pursue him, shooting at him a few times. But yeah, good last day buck.
Huh? Yeah, that's a real good one.
That's always the best when you can get one on the last day or the last couple days.
Oh gosh, no, they all are. Yeah, the last days are the best.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of mine are. Yeah.
Talk about a relief.
Yeah. I wonder if it's something to do with, well, you're passing probably a lot of them up to that last day, it seems like. But then that last day, it's like you just all or nothing, right?
Yeah, you're getting paid for your reward, and sometimes your hard effort and your persistence pays off. Sometimes it doesn't, And sometimes the guy that didn't put any effort into it wins, and that's just the way that goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I always say there's no justice in deer hunting, but when it all works out, you put your effort in, and things go your way. That's the reward.
Where's your favorite place you've hunted, do you think, over the years?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'd say probably Maine. Maine
When it
we
was
had
good?
when there was the big woods and a lot of snow, and I like to camp in and the 4-wheel drive and boat rides, and
You said you'd hunt the mountains.
yeah, we used to hunt
Right.
that. We wanted the snow, so we were having to hunt the mountains. If you had enough snow, you had a choice of the swamps.
Yep.
I prefer swamp hunting. Depends on where the snow is.
Right. It must have been fun back when it was good.
Yeah, it still is.
Yeah.
Still is fun.
Oh yeah. It's
Just was,
yeah.
It just was ridiculously good then.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Well, you could have 2 guys in a pickup and ride around in the morning and look at tracks. And we get out and walk on them. So
Yep.
the next guy behind you wouldn't see him, of course.
Gotcha.
But we'd ride around and finally decide who was going to take what track, and we'd each have a track to track for the day.
Yep.
Now, I mean, that's pretty ridiculous to think you could do that now.
I know. It seems like you got to work and work and work to find one nowadays. A big one, anyway.
But there's guys that do it. There's a lot of real good young hunters in New England that
Yep.
run to them all the time up there, New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine, and they're getting out and getting after them.
Yep. It's a lot of fun. I know that. It's my favorite thing to do is tracking. It's just kind of keeps you engaged the whole time, That's just the way my mind works.
Well, when you're tracking, number one, there's any chance of seeing a deer at any second. Even if there's not, they're taking you through the country where the other deer are. And that's where other bucks will be, or they know where the does are. They know where the
Right.
feed is. Following that buck along will bring you to another deer many times. A lot of these deer that people say they shot tracking might not be the deer they were tracking.
Right. It was
They
just
might
a stray.
stumble onto another one, but nobody ever really follows out that last 10 yards of the tracks. You're so excited you shot it,
Yeah.
and you get out there and like, God, was that even the right deer? And
Yeah.
Deer will lead you to deer, right? That's
they
the
do.
old saying. Now, you got a picture I asked you about of Lane with a buck with tremendous brow tines. You told the story. Would you mind retelling that story of that buck?
yeah, that deer there was a spot. Lanny marked it on the map for us where this deer could be found, and wanted us to stay out of his hunting spots because he was going back to work for a week. So we made a deal with him, and we went to that spot, and sure enough, got tracking a buck around in there, and we came up on an 8-pointer, standing broadside and laid, wouldn't shoot it. He's like, that's only a 175-pound deer. That's not the buck we're tracking. There's a bigger deer here somewhere. And like, I was already tagged out the day before. My boots were leaking. I was tired. I wanted to go home. I'm like, just shoot that 8-pointer. And I'm trying to take pictures of it with my camera.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I looked to the right, and all I saw was these 8-inch brow tines over there. I go, is that your deer? He looks over. Sure enough, it was. The buck stood right there. So some shooting later, we ended up getting him, and not too far from the road, easy drag after 4 hours of tracking. We weren't that far off the road. We'd been back and forth, and there was hot does in that swamp, and those bucks wouldn't leave.
They were just all right in there.
Yeah, they just get crazy when that full rut, and most people that hunt have seen some instance of that. I mean, we're gotten out a deer one time, this other buck wouldn't leave us, so I was throwing snowballs at it. It was hanging around, kept trying to come over to see what was going on.
Really?
Yeah.
What did that buck weigh that Lane shot with you?
I don't remember for sure, but I think like 227.
Wow.
Something like that.
Good heavy one.
It was the best brow tines that we've ever took out of there.
Yeah, they look awesome.
Yeah, it's nice antlered deer.
That's a cool picture.
The funny part, it was right where he marked it on the. Well, we drove up that road where he marked on the map, and that buck had crossed the road like 5 or 6 times during the night.
Really?
Gone down, then up, then down, then up. We kind of followed it out, figured where it's the last thing had gone down into the swamp, and we got down there and got right into him for some reason.
Right, so you had double teamed that buck.
Yeah.
Basically, you were just the eyes.
Yeah.
You had already shot one. That's cool. I've done that with some buddies. After I had shot one, I've gone with them. It's fun. It's just to have the camaraderie in the woods.
Yeah.
It seems more, it can be done with
We
two
always
guys.
double teamed. The first few years, we always double teamed. And
Yeah.
we did real well together. When one guy kind of tracking, one guy just spotting the whole time, even when the tracker's still there trying to figure out the track.
Yep.
The spotter's still spotting. And 9 times out of 10, the spotter does see him first.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you got to have good, for a lack of a better word, chemistry with the guy you're with.
Amen. Yeah, because we never had a problem. We knew who was going to shoot or who had the better shot, or if there wasn't a good shot, and we never seemed to have a problem of. I mean, I could pull up and shoot, or he could shoot. And didn't really seem to matter.
As long as the buck got killed, that's all that mattered, right?
Yeah.
That's a cool picture. You got your '82 Chevy in the back there.
That one's loaded with deer. I had 1,000 pounds of whitetails in there.
Oh, is that the famous picture?
No, there's one with a Ford that in there stuff that.
Okay.
They had one year. I had that in my Chevy a couple years. I don't know, it was 1,087 pounds, I think.
That's funny.
I went to McDonald's drive-through down in Vermont, created quite a stir down there.
I bet you did. Man.
So he gave you the pin to that buck. What was the buck that he was after if he gave that pin up?
Don't ever know. Just stayed out of his way. His area he covered so much area and so much ground that if we had an inkling, he was in the area that we just stayed out of the way and let him have free roam on that, because you need that. That's bad enough if somebody you don't know screws you up on a hunt. You don't need your own buddies doing it, because you can be 2 roads over on a buck track and all of a sudden your buddy comes steaming up on that buck track and they're not gonna be happy. So we always steer clear of each other, out of respect and
divide and conquer, right?
Yeah.
What's the best way to do it?
My first Maine 200-pounder. Walked right through our campsite at night. Left tracks right between the school bus and my camper.
Come on.
Yeah, and the
Really?
boy said, "Boy, if you don't find nothing else, you should track this down and shoot it." And they all went different directions. And
they left that track.
Yeah, because it came through camp kind of. And I ended up tracking it down and shooting it.
No kidding.
That's a good story.
Yeah. What'd that buck weigh?
That one was just 201 pounds.
Yep.
201.
Yeah. So were the boys very competitive with one another, against one another?
Not so much. I mean, just no more than any normal family would be, kind of.
Yeah.
Just doing their own thing, more against other people.
Yeah.
And I don't know, everybody's different. Everybody's got a different personality. Yeah. As I was saying about tracking, even another group of people that I know that I've hunted with, people all track different ways and different intensities and different strategies and so forth. So.
Did you ever stay in the camp with? I just seen in the books the Uncle Windy. I think that's what they called him.
No,
you never stayed with him.
No,
because I want to get somebody that knows. Lanny would probably know. I have to get him on at some point. A buck that he had shot is this great big giant one. It was in the book. It was like 180 something inches. I think it was Maine. You know which one I'm talking about?
I don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
It's in the newer Bryce Towsley ones.
Oh, really?
Bucks. Yeah, the white one, the white hardcover.
Yeah.
It was in there. I think your picture's in there too, with a buck. You looked pretty young in that picture.
Yeah, I do in a lot of my pictures.
Yeah. Huh. Must have been the earlier days, but yeah, no kidding.
Wow, there's quite a stack of antlers on that wall.
Oh yeah.
Quite a stack.
I know. I could go through every one and ask you the story, but that'd take all night.
I remember most of them.
Yeah.
I have done this, I've forgotten years, and now I write on the skull plates with a marker because I forget the years. You shoot 2 or 3 a year usually somewheres, and especially all my scrubs. I'm like, I can remember some of them, but not all of them. The big ones, of course, you remember all those.
Oh yeah.
There's a whole story to all of them. A few of them are last day bucks. I mean, a few of them are Vermonter tried to steal a track on me, and I ended up getting that one. I had to wade a river and the whole thing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, come on. There was deep snow the last day. Headed home after that hunt.
In Vermont?
No, this is in Maine.
Oh, in Maine.
Northern Maine. And the grader had plowed out to a spot there and got out beyond that. And I found where some bucks that had a fight in the road there, had a doe with them. Had a fight in the road and went down with this bank. So I went back to park and was going to track them. And these Vermonters came by and said, that's our deer. And I'm like, no, I found it first. And it was a father and son deal. So I offered to arm wrestle the guy on the hood of the truck for it. and like the father, the old guy was really laughing. He thought it was pretty funny because I was younger at the time anyways. But I said, well, you're going to have to wade a river to kill this deer. And the guy said, what do you mean? I said, well, there's a river down with that bank where they went. They're going right across it. He didn't know about wading the river. So I said, well, I'll see you later. So I went down, waded the river, went down and tracked, shot the deer, had to bring it back, wade the river again, of course, and drag it up out of that bank. And I saw those guys after the season at the Sportsman Show. You remember us? I see. I goes, you shot that deer too, didn't you? I see, I did. And I shot the lesser of the 2 bucks.
Oh, really?
It was a real big one, and then it was a 208 pounder with it. The bigger one never did.
Isn't that funny that the 208's the lesser? I love the stories when people talk like that. Oh, the 208 was the little one.
You could see they would have a scuffle, almost like just nose to nose. No blood or hair, like that kind of fight or anything, but the one buck would run off to the side, and that big buck stayed right with that doe. And he'd go along a little further, and that other buck would be back on the track. He'd come back in again. He just wouldn't leave him alone. And I caught him doing that one time. He made one of those loops around. I caught him coming back. But last day, I was already wet from wading the river. There was no passing him up.
I think it's comical about the arm wrestle.
That is awesome.
I've had first thing that came to my head. Like I was trying to keep it light and heartedly, but like, they're not taking my track. They said they saw that buck cross the road right there the night before, and they knew he was going to cross here in the morning. And I'm like, I didn't tell them there was 2 bucks here or what was going on. The hot doe, I mean, you could see that was what was going on. Like, this is money right here.
Yeah,
fresh, because they'll get hung up with fighting over that doe. But it was the little river and wading involved in it. But
All worked out.
would you have beat him? Arm wrestle?
I think so. He's kind of scrawny. But
I had a buddy do that up north. Got out, and another guy had just come out in the woods or something. And he says, "Hey, that's my buck track." And he says, "You want to fight over it?" And he says, "No, you have it."
That's funny.
Yeah, that's too good. Huh?
Do you do a lot of antler hunting as well?
Yeah, quite a bit. When Ontario, particularly, we used to find them, picking them up there. But I'm always looking for them. I've always picked them up and lugged them out.
Yeah, I see you got a pile of moose antlers over there.
Moose antlers. I've lugged plenty of those out over the years. And
Yep.
I can't resist a skull or
I do too. I carry everything out.
whitetail skull that after it shed. That's
Yeah.
one of my best trophies. That's like really hard to find.
Yeah.
That was in Maine. The same day I found a big moose antler. Yeah, it was a good day.
That looks like it was a real big buck
It
too.
was decent. Yeah, it wasn't. I don't know. I've kind of measured it against some other heads I've had here. It wasn't tremendous.
No, it just looked like bigger pedestals or whatever.
It was a 200 pounder, but
Yeah.
died after rut down in that swamp somewhere.
Huh?
I think a lot of them do. A lot of them old ones.
Yeah,
They don't make it
Well, they
through.
get run down and not enough feed for them to recover. They get fighting injuries. I mean, some of the hides I've pulled off these big bucks to see some of the time marks in them. Boy, tremendous.
Now, what you were talking about a little earlier before we started recording about how things change, like the hunting areas. You kind of want to talk about that, like how you've seen Vermont change in a way. I think that's interesting.
Well, I think the older you get, the more you see the dynamics of a deer herd or human population, or just things change over a period of time. And what was the best hunting spot or the best this and that might not be in another 10 years. Or stuff may come back around again. I was going to buy a bunch of land to hunt on when I was young, and an old timer told me, "Suppose you want to wait because things change," and it sure does. You see the peaks and the valleys of it, and it's a very dynamic thing, I guess. Deer herd and wildlife. We've seen it here just from hunting by my house. I spend 30, 40 days in the woods here and trees right around here. So just what I see, and I have my cameras and so forth. And from one year to another, it's drastic changes in the population of the animals.
Yeah.
Weather and feed and pressure a little bit, different things. The loss of habitat with houses being built where I grew up near White River area, Heartland. Go down there now, and all places, spots I used to hunt or ride snowmobile through. There's a house there now and stuff, and it comes gradual, so people don't really think, geez, how much loss of habitat you really have. And the loss of the family farms has hurt the deer hunting a lot, we believe.
Yeah.
A lot less wood cutting, as we talked earlier, the edges that they would trim on their fields and create that new growth. And just the way the woods are being managed in general, there's just not that much logging going on, which they need. And you need easy winters.
Yeah. And you need yard and ground.
Yard and ground in the North Country for sure.
If you do get hard winters, they need to be able to yard.
Yep. One thing about, you said like houses popping up everywhere. A lot of like eastern Massachusetts, they've seen it almost like an opposite of that hurting the deer. It's actually helping the deer because people can't hunt in those neighborhoods. And now everything's almost like an edge. And now the deer population down there is just like exploding out of control because you can't shoot them. I think you see that with like Atlanta and Nashville and a lot of these cities too. It'd be interesting if 100 or 200 years from now, if a lot of this stuff gets overpopulated, like up through, Vermont, and if that's like the deer are going to, I don't know, just kind of weird thought.
Dumpster deer.
Dumpster deer, yeah, right? Suburb deer.
Yep.
Well, you go through any big city in the Midwest, grows tremendous bucks.
Yeah.
We drove out there, went through Duluth, and looked down over the bank of the interstate and saw this 10-pointer down there. It would make you drool, standing with a bunch of does there that living right in the suburbs right there. So they're always going to have their deer like that.
Most of those cities, too, are built in places that don't get much snowfall.
No.
So those deer just thrive in around, their biggest threat is cars, basically.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Do you track much around Vermont at all anymore?
No, I've never really hunted here much with my rifle. Once since the 80s when I started hunting Maine and the big woods in New Hampshire and so forth, I just always have left here for rifle hunting, didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I could come back here on a day and take a walk, and I'd see more hunters in a day than I had seen a whole week of hunting up there. And I probably saw more deer, but I see all my neighbors and my neighbor's brother and the dogs barking in the posted property, and like, there's no room to track here. I mean, for me, some spots in Vermont that for sure guys do some tracking in the big woods, but I'm not into mountain climbing quite as much as I used to here. I kind of like the easier walking.
Yep.
Where I'm hunting in Maine, I'm on a 750 acre piece last year, but boy, it didn't take long tracking. You were off that sometimes 20 minutes, a half hour. You were off that property somewhere else, so it really wasn't practical there.
Yeah.
I mean, tracking is for particularly the big areas where there's no food plots and there's no bedding area. I read in the magazine, it says to set up your stand halfway between the feeding area and the bedding area. Well, Jesus. I run around Maine looking for that, and I'm like, there's no such thing here. They just bed where they wanted to bed and fed where they fed. But all the time while you're tracking and looking at tracks, so it's all in the memory bank. Even if I'm not specifically tracking a deer, I'm looking where are they traveling, why are they traveling there, are they coming through here at night, are they in here in the day, how they respond to pressure from down below, and the reading the tracks can always just help you, even if you're not specifically following them. But there's no more surefire way to kill a big buck in the North Woods. I mean, in tracking, that's what's well proven.
Yeah, for sure.
When we first hunted up there, I met this old timer once, and he's laughing at us for tracking. He said, I seen you Vermonters following them deer. He says, you realize you're where they were, not where they are? And that's the way they looked at it. I said, well, there's he hit something good. There's this following deer and there's tracking deer.
Yeah.
That's two different things. Some
That's
people
true.
follow tracks.
Yeah.
And they'll say, I tracked this one. You didn't really track it. You just followed it along. You didn't track it.
Yeah.
And guys tracking a day-old track thinking it's just ahead of them. You always feel bad for them like that.
Right.
New Hampshire a couple of years ago, we saw this buck track across this little parking area there, and next day there was a guy parked there, and we met him down the woods. He goes, "This buck came through this morning right by my truck." He goes, "Well, I was there. It wasn't there when I pulled in, and right by my. It was the whole there. There was a whole day old." Conditions, tracking is temperature and sunlight and so forth affects it so much that sometimes it'll go day after day. It's hard to tell a track what the difference is. Other times it changes drastically, morning to noon to night, and then the next morning, and you can get confused on stuff. You can look some of the tracks that were made yesterday when it was warm look good today, and
Right.
I do a lot of it is making my own footprints, and particularly the kicked up snow. If you're standing next to a deer track, you make your own footprint, but make sure you kick up some snow the same as a deer did. And look at that kicked up snow, how it lands in there. That's the telltale thing for me. And then, whether it's been in the sun or the temperature, and you remember, it was yesterday at this time, it was really warm.
Just those little subtle details.
Yeah. If you think you're tracking something smoking fresh, sometimes you're just looking for a fresh track, so you're following the old ones anyways.
Right.
Or you're just wanting to hunt where all the deer are, so you're following the tracks. I mean, that's all a form of tracking. Find one specific deer and follow that deer step for step all day long. That's quite a process sometimes, particularly when they get into a bunch of other deer.
Wicked. And you said something earlier about hunting the mountains of Maine, how there wasn't a lot of deer, so it was wicked. It was wicked good tracking because when you got on a big buck, you could just kind of just go on it, and you didn't have to really mess around with it. I think that
I always thought early season snow buck tracking was probably the best up there, just because they weren't going as far. They're not roaming necessarily way out looking for, and they're in their normal mode.
Yep.
And they walk in the easy walking all day long. I mean, you could track a buck all day and never duck under a branch, some of them. But then as the rut comes on, all bets are off. They're down in some shithole somewheres or
not stopping.
down in the blowdowns and across the river and back up over by your truck, and they get crazy. And after the season, who knows? And some of them you get on, they're just migrating to a different area where they like to go. And it might be 10 or 15 miles away, and you're not catching up with that deer.
No, right. They got 4 legs. We got 2.
Yeah, well, they just keep getting further ahead of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the next one you track's just inside the woods. He took a little bite to eat and bedded and waited for you. So I mean, that's the beauty of tracking. That's about trying to figure out what is that deer doing. What is he going down there to bed? Is he checking for does? Is he feeding? Is he going to go up on that top and bed down there where I see those trees up there? Or, I mean, come to open hardwoods and one softwood tree in the middle of that hardwoods. You'd be looking at that softwood tree because a lot of times that's where they're bedded is under those.
Yeah.
But back to hunting being fundamentals and sticking with the fundamentals and getting reminded from time to time that you're not sticking to fundamentals. Even at my age, as long as I've been hunting, I'll be not paying attention, thinking of something else. And a buck jumps out like, Jesus, wasn't paying attention, wasn't thinking, wasn't ready. And I guess it's all about maximizing your odds. Everything you do, from where you hunt, when you hunt, the clothing you're wearing, the gun you're shooting, what you do, everything's contributing to the odds you getting a deer or not getting a deer. Everything you can do to help yourself. I mean, the more time, obviously, in the woods, being ready to shoot from the moment you're out of the vehicle till the moment you're back, and always being on alert to shoot. That's a lot. A lot of bucks are miss walking in and out.
Right.
Guys aren't like, oh, I jumped this big one. Well, I should have been hunting instead of walking.
They were heading out because their bellies or something. They got hungry, and I've done it.
It's valuable information they just gave.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Very valuable.
Definitely.
So, at any point in time, do you ever leave the track? Do you always stay behind it? Want to know what it's going to do?
Yeah, pretty much, unless I just got to, for sure, he's cutting up into this ridge, I may cut cross lots on, but usually you waste more time by trying to cut cross lots of crap.
Yep.
If you get right to where you think he's bedding, I sometimes do make a change because of the wind. If spot I hunted in Maine a while ago was a big cedar swamp, and it seemed like the bucks would chase all night in there, and they would come up on these side hills and lay, and the wind blew right up those side hills, and you track them up there, and all you find is a bed where they jumped out. A couple times I got to those hills and circled up around them and got above them. So I have played the wind a little bit already on that final approach. But normal time when you're tracking, you don't have the time to. The deer will just walk away from you if you're messing around too much, trying to play the wind, and they're trying to be too smart about it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of tracking is when to slow down too. When to go fast, when to slow down. Larry used to say it's like being a gunslinger. It's wait, hurry. You know what I mean? It goes like that. So
Yeah.
I overran deer a lot when I was younger. I just would track them to bust them out, Shane was always telling me, you got to slow down, and look for those spots. And, you know, it does pay off sometimes.
How slow will you go? Buck's feeding in front of you. How slow will you go to catch up to him? Once you know he's giving you the telltale signs that he's going to bed, how slow are you going?
Right, if I see him feeding, he's right there. If he's really feed, sometimes they take a nip and keep on going. But if I see it looks like he's feeding, man, I'm just going on a death growl right there, because they very rarely gone further than that. To me, it stimulates they're chewing their cud or something. Take a few bites and lay down there or something. But usually it's too late by that time. You see the deer jump out, and then you go a few fists further, and you see where he stopped and took a bite. But that's why, to me, a lot of times they're literally right there, 100 yards from that.
Yep.
And sometimes those smarter bucks that do fish hook you, they'll go downwind to that spot where they want to lay down. And when I'm doing this sneak, I'm really watching with the wind just to see where I'm most least likely to see a deer, where my wind's blowing right to my one side. So if I'm scouting the area, I play the wind a little bit. When I'm scouting, I try to just to keep shooting ahead of me, you know. But on normal tracking, I don't find the wind is that much of a help or hindrance.
No, but that was an interesting thing you just said there, that you think about what spot that they're least likely going to be because of the wind. I've never heard that. That's pretty good. Because if it's like cutting straight across you, you know they're not going to be.
You're not going to be standing there looking at it. No. The same way when you're going through the terrain, I'm always looking for the furthest spot out as I'm sneaking through that brush, figuring that the stuff in close is going to take care of itself. If there's a buck right tight on you, he's going to jump up and you're going to see him. But those further spots out a lot of times, and of course any change of terrain, hardwood to softwood or vice versa, or ravines, or any change of terrain is a spot with an edge where they'll stand and watch for you, particularly tracking.
So do you find yourself scanning the woods at a good bit of distance? Not so much what's right in front of you, but do you have a certain depth of which you scan those woods? Let's say it's 50, 60, 70 yards. Are you not worrying about anything that's any closer to you than that? Because if it's within that distance, chances are you're gonna see it, you're gonna shoot at it.
Yeah, you've already not seen it.
Yep.
If you've walked up on it that close, you've already not seen it, so it's probably laying in a spot where you're not going to see good. But I'm looking for shooting lanes when I'm in that real thick stuff. Sometimes one extra step or another half step, you got another shooting lane. I'll always force to that next spot before I stop and look and try to have a spot to shoot. And you're always envisioning it, I guess. If a deer runs out here, where you're going to hold, that's like constant throughout the day like that. When it does happen, it goes really smooth. But if you're walking along thinking about work or thinking about your truck or something like that going on, that's when that split second makes a difference.
You definitely have to have one thing on your mind.
Definitely.
If you want to be successful.
Yeah, definitely.
That's for sure.
And you got to be focused.
A lot of what people need to do is a hunt with confidence. Just hunting with confidence. It's like a placebo effect. It's amazing the difference it was. It was that when I went to Maine and started hunting with the boys, and like instantly I knew I could kill big deer, and I could track deer and kill them. I just went with that. Lanny put me on a track. He said, "Don't come back till you shoot at it." Well, there you go. That was solve your problem. So I went down and shot at it, came back.
Yeah.
That's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be confident. Because if you go in the woods with a pissy attitude, like, oh, I haven't seen anything all week, whatever, you're not going to see anything.
If you're not confident about what you're doing, you shouldn't even be out there.
Right. I think that's anything in life, though, right? You got to be confident.
You got to have confidence in yourself.
Got to have confidence in yourself or you're going to fail.
The deer definitely doesn't have confidence in you if that's what it's going to take.
What would you give your 25-year-old self? What advice would you give your 25-year-old self on deer hunting? Or life, if you want, in general.
I don't know. Your health and your family, got to come first and everything. Your health, because if you don't have good health, you can't take care of your family. You can't be involved in that, and that's coming to a point in your life at some point. But if you love to hunt, you got to do everything you can to get out there every second you can and hunt, whether it's hunting or fishing or whatever it is. You need to try to do it. You need to work it in without destroying the rest of your life. I don't know.
It's good advice.
Yeah, definitely.
Just, I guess, be aware of, don't get stuck in a rut, do the same thing. I mean, to see a guy sit on the same stump for 30 years in a row, we finally shot a deer. Like, man, at 30 years, and maybe to him that was okay, but to me, I would rather have tried something else. And
oh, yeah.
I have a tendency to get stuck in a rut, get stuck in a spot. Once I get to know a place, get to know an area, I keep going back, and I have a little bit of a tendency like that, and you got to encourage people to try new places and go to new experiences.
Will you walk the same route through the woods? I do that a lot sometimes.
Yeah,
I'll get like a little route that I like. I feel like it's like, oh, I can really, pick this apart real good. And then, like the third time I'm there, I do the same thing, and I'm like, wait a second, I gotta do something else. Yeah.
Go back through where you killed that 160 just to
Oh,
see
yeah.
if there's another one still standing there.
Come on, yeah.
Well, it's got to be to each his own as far as what you get out of it and what your expectations are and your enjoyment level, and it's to each their own. And I'm the first one to say that for everybody. If you're real happy with a 4-pointer and you love it, man, that's what you need to shoot that and just love it. And if you're only happy with a giant buck, then you got to hold out for that giant buck, and it's to each their own. And if you can be happy when things don't go your way and still enjoy the hunt, and like I've said, everything's an adventure. You always want some adventure. What'd you see today? Where'd you go? And
having fun on the days that you don't kill one.
Amen.
That's
if
it.
you have some success with it, good, and can't be discouraged by other people, their naysaying or their negativity or other people's success. That actually discourages people. They see other people. It just seems like every time you put on Facebook, the guy shot another big buck. I'm like, how do they do that? Like, well, they've got something figured out here apparently.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just the spots that they hunt that separates the hunters. It isn't anybody's skill, but got a guy that's got some nice private land with a real nice food plots and some nice stands, and he passes up small bucks, manages his herd, shoots a good buck. I mean, you see that the Midwest and all. It isn't much skill difference between one hunter and another. It's having the right spots. And you go to the big North Woods and release everybody loose up there, then the skill's going to have to start coming into play. And
right. And luck comes into it too.
For sure.
Getting on the right track.
I mean, Northeast hunters are known throughout the country as some of the best hunters that there is, and people know that. Because I've talked to Barry and Gene Wenzel one time, and he said, God, if we had to come back and hunt those Maine woods up there, he goes, I couldn't do it. And
yeah, those guys probably wouldn't have a clue.
Well, they started hunting back here. I know they struggled some back here, and they shot some, I guess. But once they've discovered giant food plots and giant Iowa bucks, and they just love those big bucks. So it's all relative.
Oh yeah,
it's a relative thing to them. 140, 150-inch deer is not some huge trophy. For them, they need that 170, that 180. Here in Vermont, gosh, if we shoot 120, we love it. That's a Vermont trophy buck. And
It's a damn good Vermont buck.
Oh, yeah.
100
Yeah,
incher is a good one for me.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all about what you want. Effort equals reward. However you do it.
Have you ever dabbled in the Midwest?
Not much. We've been looking at a possibility of having a lease out there for another hunt, at least a year. Looking at Ohio and Indiana and Kentucky and some places, but just never really closed the deal on it. Haven't spent time with boots on the ground. Look at them on the internet all the time. But
Kentucky's been real hot from what I've heard.
yeah, Indiana's hot right now.
Yeah.
Indiana's smoking.
Yeah.
They went to one buck only here back a while ago. And
Yeah.
There used to be hundreds of leases available in Indiana. And they're drying up real fast.
Well, with the Huff buck especially, that new was a world record with the bow, right?
Yeah.
This thing's
We
a
always
giant.
figured we'd like one hunt a year like that you hunted so hard and was so physically draining, tracking bucks and all that you'd have one hunt a year where you could go sit in the blind like see
Yeah.
on TV. And
Yeah.
it's kind of, I think a lot of people have that to at least try it. And a little bit what we're doing in New York now, place we're setting up out there, it's going to be stand hunt where I am. It's not necessarily tracking, but there's tracking nearby.
Right.
As long as I get some snow, I found some good spots. So
Yeah, I'd like to try public land bow hunting out in like Kentucky or Indiana eventually. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I've seen some, stuff on YouTube and stuff, guys doing it, and they get into real good bucks. They claim if you get back in there a ridge or two, the whole world opens up. Not a lot of guys are getting back in, but
I guess that's way everywhere, and
yeah.
guys elk hunting telling me the same thing.
Right.
As soon as you got off the road, went over that first ridge, you
Yeah.
found they were finding elk and mule deer pretty good because the guys rode hunt them out there.
Right. Yeah, people love to ride the roads. That's for sure.
That they do.
You guys got anything else? It's been a good one.
Yeah, it's been a very good one.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah,
thank
quite
you.
welcome.
All right. See you on the next one, boys.